Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as Erik ten Hag stares down the barrel of the sack. According to one Manchester United legend, we'll also be picking up the pieces from last night. Wasteful in front of goal. What does that mean for Manchester United in the January transfer window? What deals can they get done? They certainly need to do something. What's the situation with people like Scott McTominay, Marcus Rashford, Hannibal Mabry, Pellistri, players going out on loan like Dan Gore, and then you've got Mainu and Garnacho doing so well? Is Ten Hag getting it wrong? Does it need calling out his obsession with players that have had years and years of chances at this football club, and yet he's discarding people who surely do deserve a bit of a chance? Also, we'll be talking about the dream team at the match last night. Blanc, Brailsford, Gill, they were all there. What does that mean for Manchester United? But we're going to fly straight into what Roy Keane said after the game last night. It may have been a flippant comment, and it all came from this. Basically, after the match last night, and look, I predicted this. I haven't seen Erik ten Hag's comments until I woke up this morning, but I predicted that he would say happy with the performance. We should have scored more goals, but that's on him. That's on him. He's got to be the guy that talks about that. And look, just you know what? Some people were very happy with Rashford's performance last night. That's Man United's greatest captain saying, I want a bit more. I was frustrated watching him. So if you don't like what I and others have got to say, and you think what Rashford did last night is good enough for Man United, then well done. Well done. I haven't got a problem with that. It's about opinion. I had a bit of shit this morning from people saying Goldbridge is toxic, calling out Rashford. He had more shots than anyone else. He created loads of chances. He caused the penalty. He got the assist for Delo. If you think that's good enough for Manchester United's best player and best paid player, then, you know, welcome to where we are. If you want more, and I guarantee Marcus Rashford wants more, then there's a conversation to be had, just the same as there is about Bruno and many other players who, for me, just aren't actually hitting the levels they need to be at the moment. But this is what really got Roy Keane going. Erik ten Hag on Sir Jim Radcliffe after the game last night said, I think it's an inspiration. Everyone is optimistic. There's a lot of work to do. It's a journey. We will have some setbacks, but we must stay alive. And Roy Keane's response to that was this. He basically said that, let me just get this for you. Oh, Goldbridge, you're an idiot. Why haven't you got that ready to go? I should have this ready to go. I literally had it ready to go. Why is it not there? Right, I'm going to have to go to Twitter now. Oh, I piss myself off sometimes. I had that ready to go. Apologies. This is what Roy Keane had to say. The manager there mentions a project, basically. It probably means he'll be gone in the next few months. This dreaded word project, no, I didn't see it tonight with United, and I've not seen it for the last few months. But they're in the next round. It's an easy draw the next time round, but you need a better level of performance, and the chances they made tonight, you always expect more. So Roy Keane basically coming out and saying that Erik ten Hag coming out, talking about, you know, there's a project, there'll be setbacks, it's a journey. Roy Keane basically coming out and saying, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? You know, you'll probably be sacked in the next few months for words like that because you've... And I presume he's looking at it and going, he just doesn't see anything. He doesn't see anything to think that there is a project. He doesn't see anything from that team to think that, you know, these setbacks are acceptable. It's interesting. It's interesting because I don't think that... look, as somebody that doesn't want the manager to get sacked, and I can't deny that. I really can't. And that's what Roy Keane said. The manager mentions a project, probably means he'll be gone in a few months. I want this manager to stay, but I'm fully aware of what's going on. Good morning, Dara. I hope you're doing very well. I'm fully aware about what's going on. And Sean MUFC says, Mark, it's time we call it out. Rashford isn't good enough and needs to be sold. And Drewby says, I've got a relative who works as a scout for Spurs, and he said that he's seen United scouts at the Old Firm game recently. Wonder who we were looking at. Don't know. Interesting. But I think that, look, Roy Keane doesn't always get it right. I'll never, ever forget him saying that the tackle on Luke Shaw that snapped his leg was a fair tackle. But that's Roy Keane for you. He's the greatest captain we've ever had in Premier League history, certainly. And, you know, he's got very strong opinions about what Manchester United should be. I don't think you necessarily have to follow the blueprint of Roy Keane or Gary Neville, etc. But they have got their hearts in the right place, and I think he's right about Ten Hag. I think as a football fan last night, I found us very frustrating to watch. I think that some things need calling out, and coming out after a Wigan game and saying, well, we played well, we just didn't score as many chances. I've been watching this style of football now for a very long time. It feels a lot longer than it was. And I am frustrated, disappointed, and tired of seeing the same shit attacks break down. I mean, look, at some point, we're probably going to score one of these worldies from 30 or 40 yards. But why are we shooting from 30 or 40 yards? Is this a manager blueprint, or is this just, you know, players don't have the brains when they get in the fight? There's two things I would say about United at the moment. We are either being told to shoot from ridiculous angles and be selfish. So basically, if I'm a forward for Man United, I'm either being coached and told, when I get the ball in the final third, shoot. Shoot. Don't think about passing, shoot. I'm either being told that, or we've got a collection of players that are so locked in mentally when they're in the final third, they don't think of anything else other than to shoot. In fact, the only person who I see look for the pass is Rasmus, which is ridiculous. Rasmus actually does look to pass and move. You see it all the time. Garnacho does it a little bit. Bruno does it a little bit. Rashford hardly ever does it. Anthony doesn't do it that much either. So we've got a lot of players that seem to get in the final third and shoot or try and take somebody on. Now, that's either coming from the training ground or it's coming from a lack of footballing IQ. I don't know. You tell me, I don't know. Do you think the manager is telling the players to shoot on sight all the time and be selfish? Because if he is, he's going to lose his job, because we are rubbish at scoring goals this season. We're absolutely terrible. The solution, the solution at under 6 football and Premier League football is when you're near the bottom of the Premier League for chances created and goals scored, you need to simplify your chances. So if you're on the training ground and you're watching somebody train and you're a coach and you see that they're a good player, but they're shooting from 30, 40 yards all the time and they're taking people on too much, when you take them aside, what do you think you say to them? I'll tell you what you say to them. You say, simplify your game. You're a good player, but you're shooting from too far out and you're taking too many people on. Play the pass and move, and you'll get it in a better position and we'll have a better chance and we'll score more goals. Trust me. Why is that not being communicated to our front line? Stop shooting from 30, 40 yards. Stop slowing the play down. Stop taking people on. Pass the ball, keep the rhythm going, and you'll get a better chance. Now, I can't believe that a man like Erik ten Hag and the job he did at Ajax hasn't told the players to do this. So clearly, in my opinion, I think he's got players who just can't do it. They get on the pitch in front of tens of thousands of people and all logic goes out their brain because all they think about is scoring goals. And it's a massive, massive problem. Viking Steve, welcome to the Members Club. But look, do I agree that Ten Hag is facing the sack? That's the starting story here. And this obviously comes from what Roy Keane has said. Look, I think Roy Keane was pissed off last night, and I think he was pissed off about a lot of the things that you were pissed off about as well. I think he was unhappy with the way that we played. I think he was unhappy with the style of football. And, you know, as he says there, the manager mentions a project. It probably means he's going to be gone in the next few months. I didn't see it tonight with United, and I've not seen it for the last few months. That's very damning, because I'm not saying that Sir Jim Radcliffe is going to sit there and read what Roy Keane's got to say. Far from it. He definitely shouldn't. So David Brailsford shouldn't. You shouldn't just be listening to ex-players. I mean, that's going to send us down a road we don't want to go down. They would not have sacked Ollie. So we don't want to be listening to ex-players verbatim. But as a football fan of Manchester United, which I assume Roy Keane is, he raises some valid points. We haven't seen anything for the last few months, and we didn't see anything last night. Wigan are not a very good side, and I think if we'd played a good side last night, they'd have beaten us. I don't know how high you'd need to go, but I would imagine certain championship sides would have given us a problem last night, and that was our best team. So I don't take a lot of positives from the performance last night. I thought we played badly, apart from Mainu, Garnacho, Delo. I thought Johnny Evans did okay. Wan-Bissaka and Varane did okay, and Arna did okay. But in general, I thought it was a poor performance from Manchester United. And I think that when Erik ten Hag comes out and talks about projects and time and setbacks and journeys, I think this is what's probably irritated Roy Keane, and probably has irritated some of you and me to a certain extent. What journey? What setbacks? What are we talking about, Eric, here? I don't actually really understand what he's talking about when he says, you know, I'm optimistic. It's been inspirational talking to Sir Jim. There's a lot of work to do. It's a journey. We'll have setbacks, but we must stay alive. I mean, I actually want Erik ten Hag to stay. I want it to work, but I don't know what all that means. So the last 18 months, you've not been on a journey. You've had £400 million, mate. Like you play, a lot of your players you've brought in don't look like they're going to work. What's the new journey then? Did you not buy those players? Why are your players shooting from stupid angles all the time? Why is the football really bad? Like, why are we losing so many games? You've been in charge of that. So why do we need to accept more setbacks? Why are we going to have more setbacks? We're getting players back like Martinez and Casemiro. Why are we having more setbacks? What we got to stay alive from? What's the work you're going to do? And these are things that even I, who want Ten Hag to be successful, I'm sort of like going, what are you saying? What are we saying here? Because I actually just don't know. I don't know what we're saying here. And I said it last night, and I'll say it again to you now. If we're out the FA Cup before March and we're out of the top four technically by March, I don't think he sees September. I think he'll be gone. I personally think Ineos are like that with Ten Hag at the moment. And I think a lot of fans are like that with Ten Hag at the moment. And I don't think, actually, as somebody that wants him to stay, I'll say it right now, I don't think he should be given a free ride into the summer and next season. I think he's got 4 months to prove that he deserves to keep his job. And if he doesn't, I think he'll be gone. And I sort of agree with Roy Keane in that sense. I think that he can talk about projects, journeys, setbacks and all that, but there isn't any more setbacks, I'm afraid, Eric. I don't think there are any more setbacks. So I think you either stay in the FA Cup very, very deep and keep in the European place races very, very deep, or you will be gone. I don't think there can be any more setbacks. I really, really don't, because I just don't see how Man United are putting their best team out and not playing well against the likes of Wigan and Nottingham Forest and Bournemouth. There's a huge issue there, and I think we're struggling. I think we're really struggling, and I think a lot of our players are visibly struggling. Trying to play out Ajax football with Bruno and Rashford is like trying to eat soup with a fork, says Michael Neal. Well, you know what? I was reading this morning, coming back to the news, I was reading this morning that Pellistri's going to go to PSV or the MLS. Mabry's going to go to Europe or Everton. Dan Gore is going to go on loan. And yet, last night, I saw Mainu and Garnacho perform as our two best players. This needs calling out. I'm going to call this out. This, you know, Ten Hag needs calling out about this. I'll back him, but I'll also call him out as well. I don't know why Bienda's not played any minutes, but forget that. I'll call this out. Kobe Mainu is our best player at the moment, and Garnacho's our second best player. You're loaning out Pellistri, which I don't agree with, by the way, but I just don't think he likes him. You're loaning out Mabry, which a lot of people like as well. You're loaning out Dan Gore. Now, I agree with those things to a certain extent if you weren't being such a hypocrite with other players. So you're sending Pellistri on loan. You're sending Mabry on loan. But Mainu's playing and playing well. But you're going to continue using Scott McTominay. You're going to continue using Marcus Rashford. You're going to continue using Anthony. Now, whatever you think about McTominay, Rashford and Anthony, they're having horrific seasons. So we're going to keep giving them opportunities, but we're going to loan out Pellistri and Mabry, who could come in and do a better job than certain players who are absolutely stinking up the place at the moment. And it's this type of hypocrisy that needs calling out at this football club. I can't give you the answer, and nobody can give me the answer, why Scott McTominay continues to get picked by Manchester United managers year after year. We can't just survive on he must be good in training. We watch him every single game, and he is clearly not being good enough for Manchester United for at least 5 years. And 5 years, we keep seeing him start games for Manchester United. Clubs have offered us £25 million for him, and we still keep him. That needs calling out. If you're a manager of Manchester United and you keep doing that, you need calling out. Why is Mabry not getting chances but McTominay is? Why is Anthony and Rashford starting so many games but Pellistri's not being given any game time? It needs calling out, because it's hypocrisy when you've got Mainu and Garnacho who've been given those opportunities and have grasped them. They're hungry players who want to succeed. And I'm not saying Mabry and Pellistri are good enough, but my argument is Are you telling me McTominay is? Like, you're telling me Mabry's worse than Scott McTominay? Well, Mabry is young, hungry, and determined. Why are we loaning off players but keeping the shit? And that needs calling out. And I don't know why this manager keeps doing this. I don't know why he keeps doing it. I've got no clue. Is it player power at Manchester United? Because I don't understand it. And I'm tired of it. And the reality is, I've figured it out, as I'm sure many of you have. When it comes to McTominay, Rashford and Bruno, if they score or get an assist, it's fine. But if they don't, they're not offering that much at the moment. And their places should be under scrutiny. But game in, game out, they're starting. And it's the hypocrisy. I'm talking about Ten Hag here. On the one hand, he talks about standards, journeys, setbacks, progress. You know, I want this, this and this. And on the other hand, he's stinking up the team with the same players every game who, regardless of performance, will start. I've seen certain players this season walk around the pitch, throwing their hands around, have one of the worst performances we've ever seen, and then the next game they're in the starting lineup. And that's not exclusive to one player, so don't think I'm talking about one player. I can think of 5 players off the top of my head where they've played absolutely atrociously in a Man United shirt. You know, basically should have wiped their arse with it if they were that disrespectful. And then the very next game, they start. Now, what's going on at the football club? You've got teenagers being the best players on the pitch. I think at some point this season, instead of loaning Mabry, instead of loaning Pellistri, he should have said, you know what, you're in your mid-20s, you're in your late 20s, whatever. You've had your chance at this football club and you've been shit for weeks. You're out and I'm giving this person a go. And why aren't we doing it? There is something very weird at that football club going on. Very, very weird. It's sinister weird. There is player power or something going on, mates rates, I don't know. But some of the team selections this season have been really good. You know, getting Mainu in the team and trusting him has been brilliant. Garnacho's getting the run of games that we wanted. Those things really make sense. And on the other hand, you've just got certain players who just keep getting picked. And I don't get it. Ollie done this as well. He dropped better players, says Sid. Well, there's a problem at this football club. And we can talk about Ineos actually now, because you know what? Let me just go back to this as well, because I want to put this up on page so it's just not it's not football fans, you know, it's not fans with agendas saying this. So Roy Keane said last night, I wanted a bit more with Rashford. We're getting frustrated watching him. A lot of people have spoken about it. His inconsistency, his bad performances. Look, I have a bit of a theory in relation to Rashford, but what I will say is that it's quite clear that Ten Hag is a bit, and I want to say this in a respectful way, is either deluded or weak. And I say that as somebody that, you know, wants him to be better. I think last season he was a lot stronger than he has been this season. I don't know what happened over the summer, but from his very first press conference, I noticed that Ten Hag changed. Last season, his press conferences were better. They were forthright. He was more on the front foot. He had more character about him. This season, he looked more like a puppet from day one. And I think he's behaved like one for a lot of this season. I think his stubbornness has been his downfall. I think he lost a lot of the dress. Well, I know he lost a lot of the dressing room, how he treated De Gea in the summer. And not because people don't like Onana, by the way. Onana is very well liked in the dressing room. It's just the fact that the way De Gea was treated, you know, that doesn't go down well with a dressing room where people are friends. And I think he mentioned on the pre-season tour that players weren't running around as much. And I think he's lost a lot of authority. And these players have sacked other managers before. And I think Ten Hag has to look at this himself. I think he's lost something this season, and I don't really understand what it is. And he's lost so much respect that he had last season. It's so obvious that the players aren't, I don't think the players aren't playing for him, but I don't think they believe in him as much as they did last season. And I certainly think that that's starting to, infiltrate the fan base as well. I've said, how many times have I said this morning? Even as somebody that wants him to do well, I sit here and go, I don't know what his plan is. You know, you could sit me down, and I will always try, like all of you lot, I will always try to stand by my points and argue my points. But I've got to be honest, somebody with a bit of intelligence who's Ten Hag out could sit me down at the moment and say, what is his plan? What is he trying to do? Why do you think we should stick with him? What is he going to do to Manchester United? Because I would sit here and go, well, I don't know. I actually don't know. Some of the things he's doing at the moment terrify me. What he's done with the midfield this season appalls me. I'm just hoping that when Casemiro's back, he's going to make his midfield Casemiro, Maino and Bruno. But is that a fan theory? We've been there before. We used to do this with Van Gaal and say, surely Herrera will start. You know, just because we think Casemiro, Maino and Bruno is the perfect midfield, I wouldn't bet anything on that. He's got Mason Mount. He's got Scott McTominay. Do you think he's going to stop playing the two attacking midfielders? I don't know. And I don't know that things necessarily get better over the next few months. And I, you know, I'm in a balance here. I can see a brand new project with a brand new manager in the summer. I can also see United improving this season and Ten Hag getting another chance. But I've got no confidence either way. Morning, Mark. Great work always. Eric Ten Hag team selections need calling out, says Jack. I've just done it, mate. I've literally just done it a few minutes ago. Alex says, Mark, my opinion with Rashford is he was best friends with Sancho, but also has the most power at the club, and he's toxic, says Alex. Mark, what's Darren Fletcher's influence on the team? In the background, maybe it's in the contracts, but how are these players getting picked is mad, says PJ. Ten Hag said about how good Ahmad was before the game, yet he was an unused sub. I think he was ill, Jack. And Martinez and Casemiro back. Let's build a strong defence and hope we can get scrappy wins for the rest of the season. Scott's contract must say he has to play minutes, says Daniel. And there must be something in his contract, says Patrick. Højlund gets no service as they know he's no good, says Colin. And Mainu future captain, says Viking Steve. Look, I'll talk about two things there because there's a couple of bit of things in there. In relation to Rasmus Højlund, I've said it before, I don't know what we're doing as a fan base. I saw people last night complaining that Bruno got a penalty. The day I see Man United fans slagging off a Man United player for winning a penalty is the day I know we've got big problems in this fan base. And I think we have. I think Player FC exists. I think we have fans in this club who don't want certain players to play well. They actually enjoy it when they play badly. And I don't understand that. I don't want Scott McTominay to play for Man United, but I expected him to score last night and I'll celebrate it when he does because I want Manchester United to win. But there seems to be people in our fan base that really want to hate and dislike certain players. And I think Bruno last night was very clever. He won as a penalty in a game where who knows what could have happened in the last 10 minutes at 1-0. He made it comfortable. We move on. As for Rasmus, 20 years of age, no senior striker to work with, a bunch of selfish shits who never passed to him, and he's meant to be leading the line for one of the biggest clubs in the world. He should have scored a couple of goals last night, there's no doubt. But here's a player I like, and he plays for a Liverpool who I don't like. I'd take Darwin Núñez at Manchester United tomorrow. I might be in the minority, but I watch him quite a lot. His work rate, his link-up play. Yes, his finishing is dreadful, but I think at some point it will turn around. I'd take Darwin Núñez at Man United in a heartbeat. And people need to watch football because we can all banter people for missing chances, but it's not just about that. I would take Darwin Núñez in a heartbeat. And what I respect about Liverpool fans is they stick by him, they look after him, and they support him. He's missed more big chances this season than any other striker. And Liverpool fans will stick by him. He cost them 80 million. He's in his mid-20s nearly, and they stick by him. And I look online and I see United fans turning on Højlund, and I think, you know what? We're not the Glazers. We didn't buy all this shit. We didn't take the dividends, and we didn't put the club into debt. But we are contributing to the toxic nature in our football club when we're turning on our own players to an extent where we're basically calling starting hate campaigns against them. And I mean that about Bruno, and I certainly mean it about Rasmus. There's a bit too many Man United fans to my liking who are starting to use the word flop and not good enough for Rasmus, and I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I see a really talented player there that is a work in progress who gets very little service, but yesterday he did and he should have scored. I'll say that, but we've got to stick by this lad. You know, we've got to stick by these players. We shouldn't be turning on them when they're that young and they're that hungry. Not at all. I hate to say it, but we should be taking lessons from Liverpool and how they protect Darwin Núñez and they protect their own. I don't see anything in Rasmus that makes me think, oh, this is a player that we need to be turning on. No, far from it. Far from it. But in relation to Rashford, because people will say, but you'll turn on Rashford. Rashford's been here since, I don't know how many years Rashford's been here. I don't know how many years Martial's been here. If Rasmus is playing like he's playing now when he's 25, we can have a conversation. Rashford's been here for years. He's earned good money. He's had good seasons. He's had bad seasons. Martial and Rashford should be, at this point of their careers, two of the best players in Europe. And they're not. Martial's about to leave for nothing. And Rashford's under huge scrutiny at the moment. But I don't know what we do with Rashford. We've got 4 months to figure it out. I don't think for 1 minute Ineos would consider selling him, and I think that's their biggest mistake, and that makes me think Ineos may not succeed. Because if they're coming into this football club and saying certain players are untouchable, they're making the same mistakes of the last 10 years. Ineos have to be having the same conversation you're having. They have to be sat there going, do we sell Marcus Rashford? Doesn't mean they do it, but they have to be open to it. Because if they're not open to it, they're not the saviour of Man United. Because when you break it down, whether you're pro Rashford or against Rashford at the moment, Ineos have to come in and go, we might sell him. They have to have that mentality, because if they don't, they've already lost. If you're coming in and saying this player that's been really inconsistent is staying no matter what because he's from the youth setup or he's from Manchester, you've lost. You can't have a mentality like that. Do you think Pep Guardiola's got that mentality? Do you think Jurgen Klopp's got that mentality? If you want to be the best, you've got to be ruthless. And if you're going to be ruthless, you've got to say, I might sell Bruno. I might sell Rashford. They've got to do that. But I get the feeling Ineos are going to come in and say, absolutely not. We're not selling Marcus Rashford. We're not selling Bruno Fernandes. We're building a team around them. The problem is, Ollie's tried that. Mourinho's tried that. Ten Hag's tried that. And they're inconsistent. So there's a decision to be made about big players at Man United, but I don't think for 1 minute Ineos would consider selling a Rashford or a Bruno. And therefore, I don't actually think they can be successful, because if you are really going to make change and you are really going to do a strategic review, then everybody knows you've got to put people like Marcus Rashford on the chopping board to be scrutinised as part of a review. He's the biggest earner. He's had 2 bad seasons in 3. He's not young anymore, and he's quite one-dimensional as a player. So he has to be scrutinised. Of course he does. The flip side to the coin, in my opinion, is if he starts scoring goals, the problem disappears. I don't know what we... In fairness to Rashford, I don't know what we expect. He is not creative. He is not a hard-working, Anthony Gordon type aggressive winger. He is not a particularly good presser of the ball. But what Marcus Rashford is a player that can go and score you 20 goals from the wing. And if he does that, there isn't really a problem. The problem with Rashford is what he's good at really exposes him when he doesn't do it. You can be a footballer who's good at passing, reasonably good at scoring, reasonably good at assists. You stop getting assists, but you score goals. You stop getting assists and goals, but you're tracking back and working hard. What we've got with Rashford is quite a one-dimensional player. And when he scores goals, he's one of the best players in Europe. I've said that before. When he's scoring goals, he's one of the best players in Europe. But when he's not scoring goals, he hasn't got another attribute that he can fall back on. And at his age, that's probably not going to change. So as much as it's frustrating when he doesn't put the cross in, and as much as it's frustrating when he's not strong in the 50-50s, if he's scoring a couple of goals for you, you'll ignore it. Many of you said last season, Rashford had a bad game today, but he scored 2 goals. And I'm like, well, he didn't have a bad game because he just scored 2 goals. I was thinking about it last night for too long after the show. I was thinking about it last night and I thought, you know what? I feel I'm approaching this Rashford thing too in the wrong way. Disappointed, frustrated, yes. But we can't start saying he needs to pass more. We can't start saying he needs to track back more. We can't start saying he needs to dive into 50-50s more. That's not who he is. That is not who he is, and we actually are being unfair on Rashford when we say that. We can't demand that he passes more. We can't demand that he whips better crosses in. We can't demand that he flies into 50-50s because he's not Anthony Gordon. You know, he's not that type of all-round winger. What we actually need him to do is just start scoring. And then what you need to do, and this is not my job, it's Ineos's job, you need to then say, even if he is scoring, is that enough? Is it enough to, some might say, carry Marcus Rashford on that wage in our starting lineup when all he's really going to do is score goals? And that, I don't know. Yes, no, I don't know. Some people might say, well, no, it's not enough. Mo Salah scores a lot of goals, but he also creates a lot of goals. He also works hard from the front. Some would say, well, Ronaldo used to do that. Used to score a lot of goals, didn't used to track back, didn't really used to pass that much. So, you know, that's a personal choice. And maybe for Ten Hag, that's enough. If Rashford starts scoring again, maybe that's enough. But I think we've got to be fair on the player. And I was wrong last night as well. I was getting frustrated with the shots. I was getting frustrated when there's a cross on and that. But he's not that player. He's not that player. What we've got to decide, and what Ineos have got to decide, is do we just want our left winger, because that's where he's got to play. He can't play right wing and he can't play up front. Do we want our left winger to be a player that's not going to create, he's just going to score goals? And he's going to go through dips and peaks and troughs. And if we can do that, fine. That's the guy. Marcus Rashford's the guy. If we want more, if we want a player that's going to... if we want a player that is going to offer more than that, then we're going to have to do more than that. Wait a minute. Let me just set this sorted out. Oh, no. Someone's coming down. So, yeah, look, that's the door for Rashford. No, but you know what? I think sometimes we get really angry and we get really aggressive and we get really frustrated. But I think, we've got to be a little bit fairer than that, because I think that football, we all want to analyse football. We all want to be statistical in our football, don't we? And I was thinking about it last night, and I was thinking about McTominay as well. He's not good enough for Man United, McTominay. And if he doesn't score a goal, he doesn't offer anything, does he? I mean, last night he had, he's playing in a midfield three, and he had half the touches that Mainu and Bruno had. If he doesn't score a goal, McTominay's a waste of time. But McTominay's a midfielder. And I can't have a midfielder who just scores goals. You can't have a midfielder who's just a goal scorer. A midfielder's got to be more than that. Can you have a left winger who's just a goal scorer? I think you can last season. But if he doesn't score goals, it becomes a problem. I'm telling you now, if Rashford starts scoring goals, everyone will shut up. And that's why I wanted to say this, because I think he might start scoring goals again and everyone will say Rashford's back. And in a sense, they're right, because it's just what you want in a winger. I think this whole Rashford's Trashford, I never liked it. Rashford's rubbish, I've never liked it. Rashford's world class, I've never liked it. The truth is that as a goal scorer, he can be one of the best in Europe, but he won't give you much else. He's not going to run his arse off doing 50-50 tackles. I don't think he can do that since he's had his back problem. He's not going to, get his head up and play a De Bruyne type cross. He's not necessarily going to play a first-time pass because he's somebody that likes to survey what's going on. I think there's a decision to be made. Do we want to stick with Rashford for the next few years and rely on his goals, or do we want more from our left winger in relation to creativity? And that's, I think, in fairness, Ten Hag wants what Rashford gives off the left wing. And I think that's on the manager. And look, I could have come on this show this morning and done a very different line. I could have gone, it's on Rashford. He ain't good enough. Let's sell him. Ten Hag needs somebody else. I've chosen to go down the route of, I put this on the manager. Rashford is what he is. He's a goal-scoring left winger. That's what he is. Why are we trying to turn him into something he's not? He's an out-of-form goal-scoring left winger, but when he's in form, that's what he does. I personally have said this before. I think Marcus Rashford would suit, and I don't know in Europe, somebody might tell me Atletico Madrid, they might tell me another team, but in the Premier League, I think Marcus Rashford would suit Everton, Brentford, West Ham, and I'm trying to think of a top-level club that counterattacks on the break really, really quickly. Man United. Well, we don't do it very well at the moment. But I think he suits a team where he's getting in behind the back four on the break regularly. And that's what Rashford suits. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in that sort of a team, we saw it for England against Italy, wasn't it? Back in the autumn. It does work. I think we've got to stop individualising the problems of Man United. As I said, I'll call it out. Why have we got young players like Mabry and Pellistri being loaned out, but he keeps picking people like McTominay, Antony and Rashford who've had loads of chances and we're not seeing much improvement? Call it out for where the real problem lies, the manager. The manager has got to stop being so bloody stubborn, in my opinion. Do you think Rashford would work for Spurs, says Patrick? He might. I nearly said Spurs. They're not really a counter-attacking team, Spurs, but they do transition quickly. But look, you know, I think Marcus Rashford loves Manchester United. I do. I think he does. And, you know, I think that I said it 2 years ago and I'll say it now. Part of me thinks a move might work, might be really good for him. But I don't think it'll happen. And I think that this is going to be look, whether Ten Hag gets sacked in the summer or not, Rashford's going to be a conversation that everyone needs to get their head around. And I think I've done it. I always liked him. And over the last few months, I've been really frustrated. But I've never really sat down and thought it through. And I think I am in a place now with Rashford where I see it for what it is. Do I want a winger who scores goals and doesn't do much else? And whose first thought is to shoot? We've got to get that in our head as well. He is frustrating, but that's what he does. When he gets the ball, he wants to shoot. And that's what Marcus Rashford is. And if you want that in your team, Rashford's the guy. If you don't want that in your team, you're going to get frustrated because sometimes he's going to score 8 goals in 10 games and he's going to shut you up. And then he's going to have no goals in 10 games and you're going to get frustrated with him. I think this is why Ricky's never really liked Rashford as a player. I think Ricky doesn't want a winger who just shoots and scores goals. He wants a winger who is creative and works hard. You know that. Listen to Ricky. And I've never really understood why Ricky never really acknowledged Rashford when Rashford was scoring goals. And it's the style of player he is. It's nothing. I'm sure Ricky likes Man United scoring goals, but I just don't think he likes the style of player that Rashford is. He's a goal-scoring winger, and that's all he is. He's not going to be a creative. He's not going to be a track backer. He's not going to be a physical type of player. But when he scores goals, he's one of the best in Europe. What United have got to figure out is, because it's not going to change, if you keep with Rashford, it's not going to change. He's always going to be that type of player. Now, Man United need to figure that out. I'm amazed they haven't. And then they need to figure out whether that's what they want to do for the next 5 years. Do you want your left winger to be a goal-scoring winger whose first thought is to shoot? And if they don't, they've got a decision to make. And if they do, then we're going to have to get used to it. The club don't owe any of these players a career. Rashford can't motivate himself on 350k a week playing for the club, says Tom. Well, I think that's a little bit unfair, Tom, because as I said, I think we're getting trapped in this thought that Rashford's selfish and doesn't care and this, that and the other. If 2 of those long shots hit the top corner yesterday, are you going to still say he doesn't care? You know, he's not missing on purpose. If those goals go in, of course he cares about Man United. I think we're criticising him for something that's not actually his fault. He is a selfish goal-scoring winger. And if those shots go in, you're going, he's amazing. You know, you're talking about accuracy of a shot at the end of the day. I don't think you can say, no, he doesn't care or anything like that. Big Zed, welcome to the Members Club. Mark says, Man United's toxic. Watch every player get better when they leave. Glazer cancer is too deep. Mental health issues are obvious to see. We need new owners. Steve McLaren as coach says it all, says Chris. Premier League managers find out his team never plays well, failing at his basic tasks of football management, and he's overrated, says Chris. Ali, welcome to the Members Club. Thank you very much. One decent cross doesn't equal service, says Dan. Scott missed clearer chances. Eric is trying to play Rashford into form. You can see he overthinks every move. Mark, I like Ten Hag, says Martin, but I can't help but feel he sees the socials and media and thinks, no, I won't be told what to do, and is stubborn with his selections from this, says Martin. There's a stubbornness to Eric Ten Hag. There is a stubbornness to Eric Ten Hag. I don't agree with Roy Keane that Ineos are going to look at what Ten Hag said last night about a project and sack him. I think Ineos will sack Ten Hag because he loses games of football and he's not making decisions that are progressive. It's a massive 4 months for so many people at Man United, but realistically, as soon as possible, you've got to get Varane and Martinez at centre-back, you've got to get Casemiro and Mainu in midfield, and you've got to get Luke Shaw at left-back and Delo at right-back and just try and get better results. You know, we've got to buy into the 5th round of the FA Cup. We've got a massive game against Spurs. Our next few Premier League games are tough. Wolves away, West Ham at home. You know, I was asked last night about Wolves away. I think it's a loss. I think the way Wolves play, it's a loss. But these are things that Ten Hag has got to turn into wins. Without a shadow of a doubt. Mark, Ricky said McTominay was the best player on the pitch last night. What if Eric Ten Hag has similar blind spots with some players, as Patrick? I saw the clip with Ricky about McTominay, and I don't get it. I don't understand it. I love Ricky's takes. I really do. But I don't get it, because you can't tell me he had a good game. You know, you can't tell me that he was running the game. He had half the passes that Kobe Mainu had. How can he be running the game with half the passes? He was invisible. I didn't notice McTominay apart from the chances that he missed. And I've always said, McTominay, if he's allowed to hang around the penalty box, will score your goals. But that's not enough. That's not enough. Even if he does score, it's not enough. Red Devil, thanks for your super chat. Akil says, Eric Ten Hag's been found out. Top 4 is the best he can achieve with this group of Prats. He hoped of getting best out of them, but unfortunately injuries and bad decisions from the club put him in this position. Josh says they almost took Bruno's leg off last night. And Tom Edwards says, Mark, I grew up watching Man United play exciting football with wingers like Steve Coppell. When you watch the tripe that Ten Hag serves up every week, it makes me sick, says Tom. Great work always. Eric Ten Hag's selections need calling out, says Joe, which I think we've spoken about. You know what? I think another thing to call out is that Aston Villa play really good football at Villa Park. They're not as good away, but at Villa Park, they're really exciting. Let's not forget, Aston Villa, if you were fortunate enough to watch Villa play Man City before Christmas, I've not seen a team dominate Man City like that in years. They absolutely destroyed them. Chances, possession, absolutely destroyed them. Aston Villa play good football at Villa Park. Spurs play good football at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Arsenal have played good football. I know they're struggling at the moment, but they're an entertaining side. Liverpool are an entertaining side. Brighton play good football at their stadium, whatever it's called. Is it the American Express Stadium? The Amex. There are so many teams playing good football in this league at the moment. And when you're not getting the results, if you can fall back on good... Brighton draw a lot of games, but their fans enjoy the football. We're not playing good football. This is not exclusive to Ten Hag. It's not happened for 10 years. I can't believe... If somebody said to me when Sir Alex Ferguson retired, not only will you get nowhere near a Premier League title for the next 10 years, you will also play shit football for 10 years. I would have been crying. I think most of us would have been crying a river. I mean, not winning the league for 10 years, not being near winning the league 10 years, would have caused your jaw to hit the floor. But not playing good football is it's bad enough that we're not competing for titles. United should always be competing for titles. But to not play good football, absolutely spot on. I speak to Ricky, I speak to people who were going to games in the 70s, and United didn't win the league in the 70s. United got relegated in the 70s. But they played entertaining football. Obviously, they didn't play entertaining football the season they got relegated, but across the 70s, I don't know. I wasn't alive. But a lot of people who watch United in those days, and it might be red-tinted glasses, will say the football was really good in the 70s. Like, it was entertaining, it was exciting, and in the early 80s as well. We just weren't consistent, which is obviously something we are now. This is the loser mentality Ronaldo was talking about, says Keane. And would Rashford's contribution be enough for Klopp and Pep? If the answer is no, he has to go, says Michael. Mate, you make a great point. Marcus Rashford wouldn't play for Pep or Klopp. No way. Bruno Fernandes would not play for Pep or Klopp. But who would? I think if you put Rasmus Højlund up front for Liverpool or Man City, he'd score goals. Because I think they've got a better build-up and construction. Now, whether Pep would want Rasmus to play up front is a different matter because he's got Erling Haaland. Whether whether Klopp would want him is another matter. But he'd score goals in that team because they're more creative. I don't think there's a Man United player that gets in a Man City team anyway. So it's a bit unfair to Rashford and Bruno to say, you know, you wouldn't get in a Man City team and you wouldn't get in a Liverpool team. The more damning thing is, I don't think either of them would get in an Arsenal team. Liverpool have won the league in the last few years. Man City have won a lot of titles. Arsenal haven't won a league in 20 years. They're in the top four, but they've not won a league. I think Martinelli would start over Rashford because he's got more strings to his bow. I think Rashford at his best is better than Martinelli, but Martinelli's got a more rounded game in relation to build-up play, work ethic. Martinelli would be ahead of Rashford for Arteta, I'm telling you now. And Odegaard would be ahead of Bruno because he keeps hold of the ball better. The amazing thing about United at the moment is, and this is the pathway that Ineos need to look at, is that if I was Arteta, the three players I would take from Man United would be Rasmus, Garnacho and Mainu. I mean, there's a very clear... This is why I would be playing Pellistri. This is why I would be playing Ahmad. This is why I would be playing Mabry over McTominay. Because, you know what? The younger players are the players that people are looking at. I look on social media and everyone's talking about Mainu. You know, that's embarrassing. That's embarrassing for the senior players. That they're meant to be nurturing these young players and these young players are actually overshadowing them. But look, in relation to topical news, it's meant to be a news show. Manchester United will be doing something in the January transfer window. Erik ten Hag was asked about this last night, and he basically had this to say. On possible loans, so loans, we consider everything, the best interest of the player and for us, our team. We will see how it progresses during the window. And that was from Laurie Whitwell. Well, this is exactly what I said. Exactly what I've said a few times and exactly what a few of you have said. The reason that Timo Werner is going to Spurs is because Spurs have realised that January is after December and January the 1st is when you can start doing business. And they've prepared it and they've got it done quickly. Manchester United are going to do exactly what they always do. Save money and therefore miss out and then do something drastic at the end of the window. We could be heading for another Weghorst, Ighalo, Sabitzer late in the window deal. Why do it late in the deal? Because after Spurs, we don't play until we've got a week off and then we play in the FA Cup towards the end of January. So why get a player in for 3 weeks when you've got to pay their wages? Well, I've got an idea. Get a player in so we can train with the players and be better and hit the ground running. But that's not how United work. So we've got... we will be bringing somebody in. I don't know who it's going to be. You don't know who it's going to be because Ten Hag doesn't know who it's going to be because Man United don't know who it's going to be at the moment. So a loan striker needs to come in. One thing I will say about Rasmus is I'm a massive fan of his and I'm convinced I will be saying I told you so. But he desperately, desperately needs somebody with him. He's not going to learn from Rashford because Rashford's not a striker. He's not going to learn from Martial because Martial's leaving. He can't learn from Joe Hugel. Like, Joe Hugel's a young lad himself. Like, who's he got to learn from as a striker? On the training ground, who is he learning from? Benny McCarthy, who is the striking coach. He needs, you know, I look at some clubs and Alvarez is learning from Erling Haaland. Like, we need to bring in another striker that can share the load and also help Rasmus. Like, I wish we had Cavani at 30. I wish we had that type of a striker because we need somebody to work with him. And it's abysmal that United have put themselves into this position. It really is. If somebody says to me again, let's play Scott McTominay as a striker, I'm going to block you. It's as simple as that, because you don't know anything about football. Just because Scott McTominay turns up in the box for a tap-in every now and again doesn't mean he can play as the last man with his back to goal, run the channels, link the play up, and chase the ball down. Can you imagine watching Scott McTominay play as a striker? It takes him about 5 minutes to get his to full speed. No, McTominay is perfect for the last 20 minutes of a game or the last 10 minutes of a game. Brentford, that's where McTominay's perfect. Brentford, who are 1-0 up at Old Trafford and are sitting back, letting us pump balls in the box. That is where McTominay would be really useful to put up front. Like, where you know they're not going to play a high line, where they're going to defend their penalty box, and you can pump crosses into the box. That's where he'd be very good. But as a striker starting for Man United, oh my God, no. Please, no. Anyway, look, thanks everyone for watching. Really enjoyed the show today. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of United. But I think there's some really interesting topics there. And as I said, Rashford's the biggest earner at the football club. He's the biggest name at the football club. So he's always going to get mentioned, and I'm sure he's used to that. But if I'm Ineos and I'm saying under no circumstances will I sell Marcus Rashford, then they're going to fail. Not because we're talking about Rashford, but it should be the same with Bruno. It should be the same with any player. If they're coming in with a true intent to rebuild this football club and be successful, then everything has to be on the table. Every option has to be on the table. And I don't think it is. From what I'm hearing already, Bruno, Rashford, and a couple of others will be here next season. They're part of the future. If Ineos are making those decisions already, then are we really ever going to get any change? Because Bruno's never going to stop being the player he is. And Rashford's never going to stop being the player he is. By their nature, I think they have to be inconsistent because it's not sustainable. Has anybody ever thought this through at United? Bruno and Rashford will always be inconsistent. It doesn't mean they're not trying, but they'll always be inconsistent because Bruno will not look and try and whack a 40-yard ball. And sometimes it works and sometimes it goes out for a throw-in. That's inconsistency in its very definition. Rashford will cut in from 30 yards and shoot. Sometimes it goes in the top corner. Sometimes it goes for a goal kick. That's inconsistent by its very nature. So if we're going to build our future around players like that, we will have an inconsistent future because they are inconsistent players by their very nature of the way they play the game. Has anybody actually sat that down and thought about that? If you've got someone like Odegaard or Phil Foden, they're methodical players. They're methodical players who are more consistent because of the way they play the game. I don't think we've ever sat down and looked at the players we've got and gone, they're top class players, but they're inconsistent because of the way they play. Rudridge says Bruno's numbers don't suggest that. Well, Bruno's numbers are an anomaly, aren't they, basically? Because we're not scoring goals and we're not creating many chances, and yet he's created more chances than anyone else in the league. Have we actually ever detailed what type of chances these are and how many times he gives the ball away? You know, if we were top of the league, mate, and we were the top scorers, then Bruno's stats are amazing, but we're not. So why is it Bruno's stats are so good and United are so bad? There you go, boffins. Yeah, go and figure that one out. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Legends in the chat as always. 8 o'clock show tonight is actually at 7 o'clock because we're doing Michael Carrick's Middlesbrough against Chelsea in the Carabao Cup semi-final. Looking forward to that. And we've got a call-in this afternoon at 4 o'clock as well, and we'll be live if there's any other news. Thanks everyone for watching. Benzema would be perfect, says Ian Disbury. And toxic Glazer era, make it stop, says Marco. Thanks, everyone. Absolute legends. Welcome to the new members as well. And don't forget to subscribe on your way out. I'll speak to you in a bit.